Shiny Pokemon are one of the coolest things in the game, so why not try and beat Pokémon X using only shinies? Hardcore Nuzlocke means if a Pokemon faints it dies, no items in battle, no leveling past the Gym Leader's Ace, we play on set mode, and we can only catch one eligible encounter per area. To add a bit of difficulty and mystery, I'm also only going to be catching one shiny per gym, so I only have 9 eligible Pokemon to use. It most certainly does. I start off my journey by choosing Froakie because he is one of the sickest shinies ever. After many resets, I finally get a shiny Froakie who is looking like he spent a little too much time in the sun.
Sun bleached.
We then make quick work of Shauna, and then it's time for our first encounter. Because I only get one shiny per gym, I'm going to have to be very careful with where I choose a shiny hunt because the Pokemon I get will be completely random. I choose Sandloon Forest and I run into a Scatterbug, which seems to have been hanging out in the same beach as Froakie.
Sun bleached.
After catching Scatterbug, there isn't much interesting until the fight with Viola, who is one of the hardest gym leaders in the game usually thanks to her Vivian, but we have one of our own. She leads Surskit and I lead Vivian. I start off with a Struggle Bug, which does over half and lowers her special attack, decreasing the damage I take from Bubble. She gets off a quick attack, but I'm able to finish her off with a Struggle Bug. Next comes out the problem of her own team, her own Vivian. Her Vivian knows Infestation, which makes her very tough. It does a fixed amount of damage, and once she uses it, we can't switch out. I go for a Struggle Bug to lower her special attack while she gets off an Infestation. We're now trapped. I go for a Stun Spore, which thankfully lands as she just goes for another Infestation. I try and protect to stall out all the Infestation turns so I can hopefully switch out soon. I then get off a Tackle, which even with a crit does nothing. I stall another turn of Infestation, which luckily means I can switch to Aaron. I get off a Bubble as she gets a full para. I get off another Bubble, which unfortunately means she's going to use a potion next turn, and her Tackle does more than I thought it would. I get off a couple more Bubbles, and luckily she does get fully paralyzed, and I'm able to take her out with one more Bubble, winning us our first badge. Unfortunately, I can't use any of the starters Professor Sycamore gives me because I won't be soft resetting the rest of the run. It's encounter time though, and I need a Pokemon who can take some hits from Grant's rock types, and one of those ground types would be perfect. So I shiny hunt and find a shiny Sandile. Sandile is one of the coolest Pokemon in the game and knows how to rock some shades. With that, it's time to face Grant. He leads Aurora while I lead Aaron, who is now evolved into Frogadier. I start off with a Rock Smash, which is 4 times effective and takes him just below half as I get paralyzed. Amora now outspeeds and hits a not very effective Aurora Beam as I knock it out with a Rock Smash. Next comes out the always deadly Tyrant. I stay in hoping I can get off some damage, but I get flinched by Bite. I then switch to Armin, who takes a bite but now baits Rock Tomb, which Sandile will resist on the switch. My speed is lowered, but so is his attack. So he goes for a Stomp, which doesn't get a flinch. I get a little bit of chip from Rocky Helmet as I hit a super effective Bulldoze, which just barely misses out on the KO. Grant then heals as I hit another Bulldoze, and thanks to him now being -2 speed, I can outspeed and take him out with one more Bulldoze, winning us our second badge. Our next fight's against the always scary Karina and her duo of dangerous Lucarios. I start off with Armin using Psybeam, and for some reason her Lucario goes for Metal Sound without even knowing a special attacking move, so it's essentially a free turn. I go for Psybeam again, which brings her to just about half as Lucario sets up a Swords Dance, which would normally scare me, but I quad resist Lucario's only stab move, so we're not in any serious danger. Lucario's Feint does just about a quarter as I continue to just go for Psybeams. Lucario goes for Feint again, so I switch it up and go for a Draining Kiss to heal back some of the damage I've taken, because I don't think Psybeam or Draining Kiss was going to kill. On the next turn, one more Draining Kiss is enough to finish him off. The second Lucario goes down in almost the same way with Psybeams and a few Draining Kisses as the all-powerful Armin single-handedly destroys both of Karina's Titans. It's now shiny time, and on Route 11 I find myself a shiny Hariyama, who is a great Pokemon with a lot of bulk. He also has Guts, which is a great ability as he can do a ton of damage. It's time for Karina's gym battle, which has always confused me why she doesn't use her Lucario, but whatever. She leads Mienfoo and I lead Armand. She starts off with a fake out, which is perfect because I'm holding a Rocky Helmet for Chip, and I also have the ability Shield Dust, which prevents effects from moves, and so I'm able to hit a big side beam. She then heals with a Hyper Potion as I heal with a couple of Draining Kisses, which eventually take her out. Next up is Machoke, who does no Rock Tomb, so I have to switch out into Rhina, who actually manages to dodge the Rock Tomb. I get off a fake out for some Chip, and on the next turn I use Force Palm, which does get the para, although I don't know if it matters. Machoke powers through though and hits us with a power-up punch. Karina heals on the next turn as I hit a couple more Force Palms, which do manage to take it out. Last is Hawlucha, who is a very good Pokemon that my team does not match up with well at all. That is if he had a Flying type move. Because he doesn't, I'm really safe to switch into Armand and then just slowly whittle him down with Rocky Helmet and Draining Kiss. And with that, we have our third badge. Wait, I've seen this somewhere before. Anywho, unfortunately I cannot add Spider-Man to the team because he isn't a shiny, but you know who is? Our next team member, who is the best birdie, Chatot. Most people think Chatot's a bad Pokemon, but I've seen him enough times on Pokemon Showdown to know Chatter is no joke.
So you've made it clear up here. I'm the gym leader, Ramos is the name. So what'd you think, you whippersnapper? Did you enjoy the garden playground I made? With all those sturdy plants of mine? Their strength is a sign of my strength as a gardener and as a gym leader. You sure you're up to facing all that?
Whatever you say, old man. Ramos leads Jumpluff as I lead Connie for his debut battle. Connie shows off his immense power by one-shotting Jumpluff with Chatter. Next up is Go-Goat, so I just keep chattering. Go-Goat gets confused and then hits himself in confusion. Ramos heals, but that is a futile attempt at quelling the powers of Connie as he gets a crit Chatter to take out Go-Goat. Last up is Weepinbell. I guess Ramos doesn't know that he can take a 5-minute walk over to Lumios to buy a Leaf Stone because Weepinbell also falls prey to a Chatter from Connie, and with that, we have our fourth badge. Are these guys serious? It's time for another shiny, and the best place to hunt before the next gym is the Power Plant, and I find a shiny Gibble who is so cool looking. No telling how awesome looking shiny Garchomp is. After we catch Gibble, it's on to Clement. He leads Amalga as I lead Crocodile. And when I go to attack with Crocodile, I actually realize I forgot to teach him Rock Tomb, so I instead have to opt for Crunch, which does do over half as Amalga gets off a weak Aerial Ace. We repeat that again as Amalga goes down, and in comes Heliolisk. Heliolisk has Grass Knot, so I do have to switch, and I go into Rhina, who gets hit with a quick attack, but heals all that damage up between the leftovers healing and the fake out chip damage. He does get off a pretty strong Thunderbolt, but I'm able to finish him off with a low sweep. I switch to Mikasa against his last Pokemon, Magneton, who just sets up electric terrain. I use Slash in order to break Sturdy, but also keep him high enough health that he won't heal. After taking a Mirror Shot, I get off a Dig, which finishes off Magneton, winning us our fifth badge. It's encounter time, and our team is extremely weak to Fairy, so I hunt on Route 14 until I run into a shiny, and it's a horde of Skorupi. Skorupi is a great Nuzlocke Pokemon, mainly because of his ability Battle Armor, which protects against critical hits. After a couple of important evolutions to some of my favorite Pokemon, it's time for Valerie and her fairies. She leads Mawile and I lead Jean. Intimidate is stopped by Mawile's Hyper Cutter, which won't end up mattering as I kill Mawile with a single dig. Next up is Mr. Mime, so I do switch to Ervin. I was hoping Mr. Mime would go for the super effective Dazzling Gleam, but it goes for Reflect, so this fight just got more interesting. I go for a Poison Jab, which brings her into the yellow and gets the poison, which I don't think will end up mattering. Mr. Mime hits a hard Dazzling Gleam, which does just about half. Valerie heals on the next turn, and Mr. Mime just barely lives after a Poison Jab and poison damage. She heals again, but after a couple turns, I am able to finish her off. Thanks to Valerie healing, it stalled enough turns to where Reflect is worn off, and so when Valerie sends out her final Pokemon Sylveon, I'm able to outspeed and one-shot with Poison. Well, that's surprising. Luckily enough for me, she just opts for Charm, and because she used all of her potions on Mr. Mime, I'm able to finish her off with one more Poison Jab on the next turn. I really thought that Poison Jab would kill with Expert Belt, but you can never assume in Pokemon, and I'm just lucky I wasn't punished. Although the Pokeball factory is being attacked, it can wait because I get another encounter, and I head to the Lost Hotel and find Shiny Litwick, which has an awesome Shiny, but after a few turns, this happens. Well, that's what I get for not checking its moveset. I guess this is the team we're riding with for now. Woohoo! At least you're strong, Mikasa. It's Olympia time, and as cool as her and her gym design are, her team is total crap. All I do is send out Jean, and without a single setup move, I just sweep her entire team of Psychic Pokemon with Expert Belt boosted Crunch, and the only damage that I take is a fake out from Meowstic, which does flinch. She uses Calm Mind, but that doesn't matter as I just take her out with a Crunch. That's the 7th and easiest gym defeated. Now that I have my 7th badge, it's time for a little kid to stop the psychopath that is the worst version of Cyrus from destroying the world. I'm also going to be skipping the first Lysander fight because there are 3 and the first is much easier than the other 2. First we have to listen to Goliath talk about his old war stories. Whoa, did anyone else know you could sit on these until now? That is so cool. Just me? Okay. After I enjoy a brief interlude, it's time to fight Lysander. He leads Minxiao and I lead Mikasa. I go for a Dragon Claw as he gets off a strong high jump kick, but one more Dragon Claw is able to finish him off. Next up is Gyarados, which has Outrage, and so I switch to Jean for an Intimidate of my own. I use Crunch, which does do just over half as I take another Outrage. I finish off Gyarados with another Crunch, and that brings out Pyroar. I switch to Aaron on a Fire Blast, and then I'm able to kill with Surf. Last is Honchkrow, so I switch to Erevan, who tanks an Aerial Ace relatively well and recovers some with Black Sludge. I then get off a Thunder Fang, which does just over half as I get the para. I then finish off Honchkrow with one more Thunder Fang. This is definitely not the last of Lysander. I then get to battle the box art legend of the game, Xerneas. This game is really dumb in that it makes you catch Xerneas, and I just stupidly knock it out and I'm left really confused when I have to fight it again. This time I just throw my Master Ball. This will be the only non-shiny I catch in this game, and I will not be using it.
But I am the chosen one.
It's time for this chosen one to fight Lysander again. But this time his team is pretty scary, as he now has a Mega Gyarados. Although I don't know why his team changes so much in just like 30 minutes, whatever. He leads Minxiao and I lead Erevan. He just goes for Swords Dance, so I'm able to outspeed and two-shot with Poison Jab. His next mon is Pyroar, which still has no counter to a good water type, so I just employ the same amazing strategies I did last time, which is just switch to Aaron and just knock him out with a Surf. This means that next up is Honchkrow. I switch to Jean, who after an Intimidate easily takes a -1 Aerial Ace, and I yet again realize I haven't taught Jean a rock move. Oh well. I switch to Mikasa, who after we trade a couple hits is able to knock out Honchkrow with a second Dragon Claw. Lastly is his oh so scary Mega Gyarados. I swap to Jean for an Intimidate, and Gyarados goes for an Outrage, which thankfully doesn't crit. I switch to Rhina, who takes it moderately well as Gyarados gets confused. I then get off a Fake Out for some chip, but on the next turn Gyarados hits himself in confusion as I get off a now super effective Wake Up Slap. Gyarados then snaps out of confusion and uses Aqua Tail, which misses. That was honestly so lucky, as I'm now able to finish with a wake up slap. I cannot believe I escaped that battle deathless. Lysander, this is the one time I understand your rage. I would probably have thrown something if that happened to me as well. We then catch our next team member, which is Durant, which I name Hanji. Hanji has Hustle, which will be such a fun ability to play with. Next up is the rival fight Gauntlet, which starts with Shauna. She leads Delcatties, I lead Rhina. I use Fake Out for some chip, which does activate her Cute Charm, and on the next turn she uses Play Rough, which does just about a quarter, which is kind of surprising considering it's super effective. I break through Infatuation and knock her out with a single Brick Break. Next up is Delphox, so I switch to Erin. She gets off a Calm Mind on the switch, which is slightly scary. A Surf does put her on the yellow on the next turn as she sets up another Calm Mind, but that doesn't matter as another Surf does manage to take her out. If that didn't kill, things could have gotten bad fast. Last up is Gudra, so I switch to Hanji, who takes a little bit of damage from an Earthquake. Luckily, Hanji has great defenses, and then I get off a Toxic as Gudra does hit a hard Dragon Pulse. The next turn I do get off an Iron Head, and she gets off another Dragon Pulse, leaving me in the red. Now that I'm in the red, I do have to switch to Rhina, who does get hit by a Dragon Pulse, but Gudra just dies to toxic damage. And that's Shauna defeated, who does lead Talonflame as I lead Rhina. I get off a Fake Out for some chip, and on the next turn I switch to Jean on an Acrobatics, which does very little thanks to Intimidate. On the next turn, Talon sets up a Swords Dance as I use Power Up Punch. After taking one more Acrobatics, a Crunch knocks out Talonflame, which does activate Flame Body. Last up is Roserade, so I switch to Connie, who takes a ton of damage from a resisted Petal Dance. That's kind of crazy. I use Roost the next turn, forgetting about the typing change, and Connie goes down to another Petal Dance. As much as I love Connie, it is sad how much damage a resisted attack did on him. RIP Connie. I bring out Erevan and just set up a Toxic Spikes as Roserade finishes her Petal Dance and is now confused. I hit her with a Poison Jab that does just over half as she hits herself in confusion. One more Poison Jab takes her down, and last up is Crawdaunt, who does get poison on the switch thanks to Toxic Spikes. I go for a Thunderfang as Crawdaunt just uses Swords Dance, and one more Thunderfang along with the Poison Chip damage is able to take down Crawdaunt. Last is Trevor, who leads with a Raichu as I lead with Rhina. I get off a Fake Out for some chip and I tank a Thunderbolt, which luckily did not activate static. I then finish off Raichu with a Close Combat. Next up is Florges, so I do have to switch to Hanji, who takes about half health from a Moonblast. On the next turn, an Iron Head does take her out, which means next up is Aerodactyl, who is a pretty scary Pokemon. He lands a Supersonic on the first turn as I miss a Toxic. I then switch to Aaron on an Ancient Power. But on the next turn, a Surf is enough to outspeed and defeat our last rival on the bridge. It's now time for the final gym leader of Kalos, Wulfric. Abomasnow does come out first, and his ability sets up the hail. Ervin uses Fire Fang, which leaves Abomasnow in the yellow as I take an Ice Beam. Wolfric then heals, and I use a Brick Break, which does do just enough to get him in range of a Fire Fang, which is able to finish him off. I was able to teach Drapion Fire Fang from the move relearner, which is 4 times effective against Abomasnow. Next is Cryogonal, so I'll switch to Aaron, who is hit by a weak Ice Beam. Rock Tomb just barely misses out on the one shot as Cryogonal confuses me. Cryogonal's defenses are so bad, it's kind of like a snowflake. Yeah. I anticipate a heal and switch to Mikasa, who kills with just a single Brick Break. Last is Avalugg, and I use Brick Break, which does just less than a quarter, which is insane. Avalugg's defenses are crazy. Avalugg then uses Avalanche, but thanks to my Hound Yachi Berry, we live on... Well, this is another instance where I shred the calcs. I thought that I could take one. Garchomp is a really strong Mon, which really sucks. It just wasn't smart to use her in an Ice-type gym. I send out Rhina to avenge Mikasa's death. After a Fake Out, which flinches, I go for a Bulk Up as Avalugg sets up a Curse. But after a Brick Break, he just sets up one more Curse, and that means a close combat will be enough to take him out, winning us our 8th and final badge. We can now add one more team member, and so it's back to the Lost Hotel for try number 2 at a Pokemon, and this time we find a shiny Magneton. This is a great encounter and helps cover a few of our really big weaknesses. It's now time for the Elite Four, and this is the final team leveled up to 65 to match the Elite Four's aces. I have a pre-burned Hariyama so that his Guts ability is in full effect. Now let's do this. Holy crap, that's hot! There is no way this is legal. Anyways, first up is Malva, who does lead Pyroar. I send out Aaron, and I start off this Elite Four with a bang, doing the same thing I've done to both of Lysander's Pyroars, one-shotting her with a Surf. Next, she sends out Talonflame, so I switch to Jean. And after the Intimidate, Talon gets off a Brave Bird on the switch, which does about a quarter. Jean has great defenses. She uses Brave Bird again, and I'm actually prepared this time, and I have a Rock move on Jean, so I go for Rock Slide, and that finishes her off. Next up is Torkoal, so I do switch back to Aaron, who gets hit with a soft Earthquake. Surf then finishes off Torkoal, and the same thing happens to Chandelure. This is the easiest of the Elite Four defeated. Next up is Wickstrom, who is in his Lord of the Rings costume. He leads Klefki, and I lead John. Thanks to Prankster, Klefki does get off a set of spikes, but I just get the one shot with Earthquake. Wickstrom then brings out Aegislash, which has a really tough ability, which has really high defenses in shield form and really great offenses in sword form. I switch to Ervin, who as Aegislash uses Sacred Sword, which leaves me just above half. Now that he's in sword form though, a single crunch is enough to take him out. Next up is Probopass, so I switch to Rhina, who takes some damage from Earth Power, Spikes, and Burn. I use Fake Out to break Sturdy, and on the next turn, I just finish him off with a single close combat. Last up is Scizor, so I do switch to John for an Intimidate. I'm left on about 2/3 after an Iron Head, and now I switch to Levi, who resists all of Scizor's moves besides Night Slash. So, after 2 turns of Thunderbolt, Scizor goes down. That's Wickstrom defeated. Now on to Drasna. She leads Dragalge, and I lead with my boy Jean. and one Earthquake is just enough to take out Dragalge, who is luckily a special defensive tank. Next out is Altaria, so I do switch to Hanji as Altaria sets up a Cotton Guard, which could be trouble. I paralyze Altaria with Thunder Wave as she gets off a Dragon Pulse, which I do resist, but still does a good amount of damage. I go for Rock Slide on the next turn, hoping for a flinch or paralyze, but Hanji just crits and finishes off Altaria right there. That saved me a good amount of time. Next is Noivern, who's a really tough matchup because he outspeeds my whole team. I switch to Jean on a Flamethrower. I then get hit by a crit Dragon Pulse as I get off a Rock Slide, which does bring Noivern into the yellow. I switch to Rhina on a Dragon Pulse and hope that Fake Out is enough to take him out, but he's left in the red. Now Drasman will heal, and that gives me a safe switch into Aaron, who after outspeeding surprisingly, finishes off Noivern with an Ice Beam. I could have just switched into Greninja now knowing how to outspeed, but hindsight is 20/20 I guess. Last out is Druddigon, so I switch to Erevan, who takes a revenge. I use Toxic to start whittling down Druddigon as he goes for a Dragon Tail, which brings out Jean. That is actually perfect because I can then get off and Intimidate. Earthquake isn't enough to kill, so I switch back to Erevan, who takes another revenge. I go for Protect to stall poison and heal some back with my Black Sludge. I switch to Hanji, who's then hit with a crit Dragon Tail and brings Erevan back in. I then Protect to stall another turn of poison and heal some with my Black Sludge. That now brings out Druddigon into the red, which means that a full restore heals Druddigon completely. So after I misplay hitting a crunch instead of using Toxic, I go back to the Toxic Protect stall strats. He switches in Levi as I switch back to Erevan. I get him into the yellow as I go for an Ice Fang, thinking it will kill Druddigon, but he lives on a sliver and goes for Dragon Tail, which misses. Thank goodness. If he went for revenge there, I was done for. After a couple of close calls, that's Drasna defeated. Last up is Seabold, who has almost as much of an anger problem as Lysander. He leads Clawitzer as I lead Levi. One Thunderbolt is just enough to one-shot and take him out. Next up is Gyarados, who threatens with an Earthquake. Since I don't have Levitate, I have to switch into Rhina, who tanks it pretty well. After a turn of Fake Out chip, Gyarados goes for Dragon Dance and Rock Slide thankfully hits. If I missed there, I would have been in a very bad place as he would have outsped and done a ton of damage to every Pokemon on my team. Next up is Starmie, so I switch to Aaron, who is immune to Psychic. I use Dark Pulse, which thanks to an Expert Belt, is able to knock him out, leaving just Bavaracle. I switch to Jean, who is at about half after a -1 Cross Chop. Jean then outspeeds and one-shots Bavaracle, which means that the only thing left standing in our way is Diantha the Champion. She leads Hawlucha as I lead Levi. I do have a Hell Chople Berry just in case of a Flying Press, but Hawlucha just goes for a Swords Dance, so I'm able to one-shot with Thunderbolt. Next up is Tyrantrum, so I switch to Crocodile on an Earthquake, which does a sad amount of damage. I then show him what a real Earthquake looks like, which of course one-shots. Jean really has been the MVP of this run, and I have loved using him. Next out is Goodra, so I switch to Erevan, who dodges a Focus Blast, which has proven to be the least accurate move in the history of Pokemon. I use Toxic as Goodra does about a third with Dragon Pulse. I Protect to stall some Toxic damage and some healing, and on the next turn hit a crit Ice Fang, and Goodra retaliates with a Dragon Pulse that takes me into the red. Goodra then just goes down to Toxic damage. Aurorus is out now, so I go for another Toxic as Erevin, who is apparently using ODM gear, dodges another attack. I switch to Levi, who somehow dodges a Blizzard. This is insane. On the next turn, Levi uses Flash Cannon to finish off the blind Aurorus. Next is Gourgeist, so I switch to Aaron, who does get hit with a Trick or Treat, but a Dark Pulse with Expert Belt is able to finish off Gourgeist on the next turn. Now it's time for Diantha's ace, Gardevoir. I decide to stay in and get off some damage with Surf, as Aaron then goes down to a Moonblast. He's been with us since the start and he had a great run. I was hoping to go Deathless in this run, but I think it would be really hard to take down this Gardevoir. I then go into Hanji, who tanks a Thunderbolt, but then misses an Iron Head for the kill. I hate Hustle. Gardevoir then finishes off Hanji with a crit Thunderbolt just to rub it in. I finish off the last Titan of the run with the Titan Slayer Levi, who shrugs off a Shadow Ball and uses Flash Cannon, defeating Gardevoir and Diantha, which means we have officially beaten Pokémon X using only shinies. Thank you guys so much for watching. It means a ton, and I would love to make more videos in the future. So if you guys enjoyed, hit the like button and let me know what your favorite shiny is in the comments below. Stay mythical, my friends.